Thank you for joining us today in Jennifer Schaus and Associates complimentary webinar series. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. today. This year, on Fridays, we're covering procurement playbooks. We take a deep dive into doing business with the federal agencies and departments with our panelists. And then on Wednesdays, we just finished the series this past Wednesday, but we covered the FAR supplements or procurement regulations for agencies and departments. So the full schedule of what we covered is on our website, as well as the recordings. So here's just a look at everything that we covered this year. So I really encourage you to go back on our YouTube on slideshare.net and view all of these great resources. And here's a look at what we covered on Fridays. So you can also search this by date on SlideShare. Again, these are just such great resources. And yesterday, we just had a webinar about executive orders and their impact for federal contractors. So next week, we'll be having one about Senate committees, and the following week, House committees and their impact for federal contractors. So these are complimentary webinars. They're recorded, and you can find the registration links on our website and in these slides that I'll send out today after the webinar. And while this is our last Friday playbook, we will be having one more procurement playbook webinar this next Tuesday, and it will be doing business with the NSA. This webinar is not recorded. It's a live webinar only. So don't miss this rare opportunity to participate, and our government speaker will be taking questions during this webinar. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And please join us for a special webinar covering cybersecurity compliance and enforcement. Our friends at Arnold & Porter LLP will be presenting in this webinar on September 30th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And this fall, we'll be starting a new webinar series covering subcontracting opportunities in the different government departments. These webinars will be on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, and they begin September 7th with the Department of Agriculture. So again, go to our website. You can find the full schedule and links under the subcontracting tab. And now we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who help make this webinar series possible. First, we'd like to thank the Virginia PTAC. Virginia PTAC is based out of GMU in Fairfax and offers free one-on-one counseling to firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. If you're interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore what PTACs can offer. And a special thanks to the Federal Business Council. The FBC creates and manages virtual and in-person meetings and events to connect industry and government thought leaders, product providers, and solutions with government programs that use them. The FBC works with a variety of federal agencies to connect government and industry in the form of in-person and virtual conferences, training events, and policy dialogue and outreach. Over the last 40+ years, FBC has become a comprehensive resource for connecting industry and the federal government. Next, we'd like to thank Dastin. Dastin is an IT and cloud solutions provider working with corporations, the military, and government agencies to lower their costs, increase scalability, improve operational efficiency, and meet compliance regulations using targeted cloud-based solutions. Excuse me. Dastin is a certified partner of Oracle NetSuite, a premier tiered Google Cloud partner, and certified partner of Cisco, Virtue, AO-Docs, and Authenticate. For more information about Dastin services or to schedule a complimentary consultation, please email Joe Alston or visit the Dastin website. So you can find that right there on the slide. Next, we'd like to thank C3. C3 ISIT develops tailor-made technology solutions that increase efficiency, bolster productivity, and improve business processes. C3 is the leading provider of managed IT services as well as compliant cybersecurity solutions for federal contractors. C3 works with defense contractors to achieve and maintain CMMC 2.0, DFARS, and NIST 800-171. Contact C3 to learn more about the CMMC 2.0 Readiness Program. The contact information is there on your screen now. Next, we'd like to thank RLJ Financial. Founded in 2008, RLJ Financial Consultants is a customer-focused, quality-driven, minority and locally owned provider of commercial insurance brokerage services. Their services are designed to maximize your return on investment in managing the risk to your business. Call Roderick today at 202-832-1417 for a free consultation and insurance quote. Lastly, we'd like to thank the PubK Group. The PubK Group publishes news and insights for government contractors, agencies, and counsel. Every day, PubK delivers news on bid protests, contract disputes, new laws and regulations, cybersecurity requirements, False Claims Act activity, and developments in mergers and acquisitions in the GovCon community. In daily news briefs and in-depth conversations and podcasts and webinars, PubK leverages its deep bench of government contract experts to keep you up to date on the fast-changing government rules and expectations. And every January, PubK presents its week-long annual review featuring more than 50 GovCon experts across a dozen panels, recapping the year's top developments. Participation and CLEs are free to subscribers. Visit PubK online at www.pubkgroup.com. Okay, so today we will be covering doing business with the Department of Veterans Affairs. So let's meet our panelists. First, we'd like to thank our friends from FedMine. Miss Archisa Meehan is with us. As always, it's great to have you with us.
It's always great to be here. Thank you.
And next, from the Department of Veterans Affairs, we have Miss Chanel Bankson-Carter with us. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to participating in today's event. Thank you for having me.
And finally, today we have a special guest giving us more of a business perspective. We have Bill James from Federal Business LLC with us. Hello, Bill. All right. So with that, I'm gonna let Archisa take over.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And if we could go to the next slide. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Archisha Meehan, and I am the Director of Federal Go-to-Market at GovSpend. Thank you, Jennifer Schwartz, for including me in the Playbook series. I actually cannot believe that today is the last of this wonderful series, which I hope has been very helpful to a lot of our attendees. And I'm super glad to be here for today's session with the Department of Veterans Affairs, with our friends from there. Chanel, it's always a pleasure to have you present. And of course, I'm looking forward to listening to Bill James too. So having said that, a little bit about FedMine. We are a federal market intelligence company that basically integrates the 18 federal data sets into one easy-to-use platform. With our acquisition last year by GovSpend, we now are the largest provider of not only federal business intelligence, but also intelligence on the state, local, and education market. So next slide. This is just a quick overview of our federal data sets that we integrate into one easy-to-use platform. Next slide. And having said that, let's talk a little bit about the Department of Veterans Affairs, one of my favorite agencies. And I think it's because they do such amazing work. And for all our veterans on the call, thank you for your service. So having said that, those who've heard me before know that I'm always interested in making sure we understand the mission of an agency and the vision of an agency, as also the strategic plan, because all of that really goes into understanding, what have they procured in the past? What are they going to continue procuring? What are the new initiatives that are going to change, how their spend is going to occur? So having said that, the mission of the Department of Veterans Affairs is pretty simple, but it says a lot in that when it says that to care for those who shall have borne the battle and for their families, caregivers, and survivors. To serve and honor the veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs actually carries out 4 specific missions. Veterans Healthcare. The Veterans Healthcare Administration is actually the largest integrated healthcare network in the United States. It has more than 1,200 healthcare facilities serving more than 9 million enrolled veterans every year. The Veterans Benefits provides a range of benefits that basically help our veterans transition back into the civilian life in the country that they actually fought to defend. And it also helps the service members transition not only out of the military service, but also helps with education and home loans and life insurance and so much more. The National Cemetery Administration basically provides burial services for veterans and eligible family members. It maintains more than 150 cemeteries and also provides digital memorialization at the Veterans Legacy Memorial. And then the 4th mission, which is really to improve the nation's preparedness for response to war, terrorism, national emergencies, and I missed out that piece, and natural disasters. So this really is the mission of the Department of Veterans Affairs. And if you start looking at the spend, it all fits in with their mission. Now, when you think about the vision, it's really to provide veterans the world-class benefits and services that they have earned, and to do so by adhering to the highest standard of compassion, commitment, excellence, professionalism, integrity, accountability, and stewardship. So it's a lot, but I think it really helps. So let's go to the next slide. So let's start by looking at some of the spending trends within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And we really do this to really get a good understanding of what is the federal agency spending, what is the agency that you want to focus on spending. And I'm always going to encourage you to look at using keywords and socioeconomic statuses as you're analyzing an agency. Of course, for purposes of this presentation, we are doing a broad overview. So, FY20 is the year of COVID, so you definitely see the spend of the Department of Veterans Affairs has gone up substantially. FY21, we are at $38 billion. Year to date, earlier this week, we were at about $30 billion. So I won't be surprised if we end up somewhere close to last year's numbers, just based on the trends as of now. Let's go to the next slide. Looking at the contracts that they awarded, they awarded $38 odd billion to more than 15,000 companies. This is just a quick look at some of the top companies. And again, when you start seeing what the contracts are awarded for, it's going to fit in very much with the mission of the Department of Veterans Affairs. And of course, the COVID definitely has affected a lot of the spend in terms of the top companies. So let's go to the next slide. In terms of your top NAICS codes, pharmaceutical preparation is definitely one of the largest industry codes, as also physician services, insurance carriers, and then of course the computer-related services. I think it's always helpful to look at the PSC codes too as you're analyzing the agency. And of course, if depending on your keywords, the results will definitely change. So let's move on to the next slide. Looking at, the top place of performance, we have Texas, Virginia, Arizona, California, Illinois, and DC as your top few states in terms of the work that is performed. And I think it always helps to look at, what happens if I'm just looking at where are the companies headquartered. And of course, this again is going to tie in with the type of work that's being done. Major initiatives, major spend will definitely affect the place of performance, as also the company headquarters. So let's go to the next slide. In terms of small contracts awarded as small business, the agency has awarded more than 27% as small business contracts. This is really based off contracts by contracting office and not as funding office, which will of course make their numbers a lot better. And again, you know, it is no small job for an agency to make sure that they do more than their goals, especially if you think about the type of you know, purchases and acquisition that an agency is doing. So you know, do want to make sure I point that out. In terms of contracts that were awarded as small business contracts, more than $10 billion were awarded to 10,555 companies. Next slide. In terms of you know, the top companies, we have a nice mix of companies, right from Thundercat Technology, Alvarez to 4 Points to Colossal Contracting. And then if we start looking at the set-asides, type of set-asides, definitely contract set-aside for our SDV OSBs will, the use of that set-aside ties in with the mission and vision for the Department of Veterans Affairs. But we also see contracts being set aside as women-owned small businesses, which I know is a major initiative at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and as also we see some small business set aside. So let's go to the next slide. In terms of looking at, you know, the top NAICS codes that were awarded as small business contracts, it's a little different. We now see, of course, our computer-related services, but we also see things like commercial construction, nursing care facilities, as also engineering services. So this is where it's always interesting to pay attention if you are a small business, how do things change? And then, of course, the PSC codes will vary based on, you know, your NAICS codes and also your keywords. So next slide. In terms of place of performance for our small business contracts, it's a little different with Virginia, California, Texas, DC being your top states. And of course, the way the company, the place of headquarters also changes for our small business contracts. So next slide. You know, I'm always going to look at how how did COVID affect the contracts that are awarded, and right here you could see that in FY20 we had more than $3 billion of contracts that were awarded under the National Interest Action Code for COVID to a little less than 2,000 companies, and the NAICS that actually included computer systems as also surgical NAICS codes, and 55% of the contracts were awarded as small business contracts. In FY21, a little more than almost $2.7 billion were awarded as contracts under the National Interest Action Code of COVID-19 to about 1,300 companies, and 43% of these contracts were awarded as small business contracts. So let's go to the next slide. So that takes us into understanding, you know, what are the various, looking at the top categories, looking at category management. Again, you know, it's going to change if you put in keywords and things like that. Your categories will change, result sets will definitely change. But I find looking at categories a very easy way of looking and understanding how is an agency spending how is it conducting its acquisitions. So medical professional services, IT, and facility and construction, definitely the top categories. And then if you start looking further at how much of the contracts is going as small versus other than small, It gives you a much better perspective of how do you position yourself within that agency based on the type of work that you do. In this case, definitely with, the VA having the largest healthcare network, it is definitely working with some of the largest pharmaceutical companies. And hence, definitely when you start looking at the broad category of medical, you're going to see the bulk of those contracts go as other than small business. And that is normal with its mission and vision. So next slide. So if I talk about categories, I'm definitely going to want to look at what are the top IDIQs that an agency is using. And again, no surprise that you'll see T4NG and Vector very much in your top GVACs that are being used by the Department of Veterans Affairs, as also followed by NASA SUP and CIO SV3 and the networks vehicle. So let's go to the next slide. So let's also look at, some of the subcontracts that have been reported. Now, let's keep in mind that when we look at subcontracts, this data is coming from USA Spending, which is getting its information from FSRS. And it's really based on data that either a prime or a subcontractor is reporting within that system. So in FY21, about $1 billion were reported as subcontract awards to 385 companies by 49 primes. The bulk of these subcontracts were in the computer-related NAICS code, and then you have some of it in construction-related NAICS codes. So let's go to the next slide and see who your top primes and subs are. Top primes include Accenture, Cerner, Booz Allen, SAIC, and Tista. And your top sub awardees include Data Dimensions, Ad Hoc, LaFont LLC. So again, it's always good to understand what are the subcontracts that are being awarded, who is winning those contracts, especially as you're trying to enter an agency, are relatively new to government contracting. You might want to start looking at the subcontract data to create those relationships with those primes that are working with the other companies. And of course, filtering the results using keywords and NAICS codes and socioeconomic status all help you get a much clearer idea of what is happening. So let's go to the next slide. So let's look at some of the grant data too. I think as I've been doing this series more and more, I have been looking at grant data to just understand how has that been affected, over the past 3 years as we've been going through COVID. And definitely you see some of the agencies doing a lot more with grants. And within the Department of Veterans Affairs, we've definitely see some of the grant awards go up in FY20 and 21. So let's go to the next slide. So now that we've analyzed some of the spends and trends, and we sort of get a much better clarity of understanding where the contracts are being awarded, who's buying the contracts, you should absolutely, within the Department of Veterans Affairs, understand how, get down to the bureau or component level, get down to the VISN level, get down to the contracting office level, based on the type of work that you do and the services that you want to offer. But now let's talk a little bit about opportunities. The most successful companies will look at opportunities not only as the new opportunities that are based on the new initiatives, which is really dependent on an agency's need and the funding that's available, but it's also based on the contracts that are expiring that are possibly going to be recompeted. So you want to look at both. Now, where do you get that information? You want to look at your budgets. You want to look at all the Exhibit 53s and 300s. You want to pay attention to the pre-solicitations and sources sought notices that are in SAM.gov at that agency level. You want to respond to them because many times that's how that agency is really doing its research. And then you also want to start looking at expiring contract searches. And you want to fine tune these results as you're creating your agency plan to work within an agency. If you are on an IDIQ or GVAC or BPA, start looking at task orders that are expiring on those vehicles. Those are some of the strategies that you definitely want to be looking at. So let's look at the next slide, which I think goes into our Exhibit 53s. This is just for those who don't know or don't pay attention, which was me till I actually got into spending time in FedMine and talking with clients. The Exhibit 53 is basically lets you know what are the major ID program initiatives. What is the total ID budget for a specific fiscal year? And this again can be very keyword based. This is just looking at your top few programs that are at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Gives you a good look at what is the total spend, are the trends going up, down, sort of tells you what's happening then within that specific program. Let's go to the next slide. Our Exhibit 300s give you a lot more information. It's broken up into programs, tells you, that CIO's evaluation on how that IT program is performing, who is the program manager, and then of course we get a much better clarity into what is the funding for that specific year. So let's go to the next slide. So let's also, now that we've looked at our Exhibit 53s and 300s, let's look at some of the contracts that are expiring. In the next 12 months, we have more than $14 billion in contracts that are awarded as other than small business that are going to be expiring. This is just a quick look at at the top 10 prime contracts that are expiring. A lot of them seem to be in the IT related field. Let's go to the next slide, which will tell you a little bit more about your top NAICS codes that these contracts are expiring in. A lot of computer related NAICS codes, as also possible R&D nursing care facilities. And again, the place of performance, you're seeing Texas, Virginia, California, which all tie in with where the top contracts were awarded. So next slide. Looking at the small business contracts that are awarded, and this is really looking at contracts that were where the contracting officer's determination is that a business is a small business within that specific NAICS code. We have more than $12 billion in contracts that were awarded that are expiring as small business. Again, a lot of consulting and technology related contracts from the looks of it. Quick look of it. So let's go to the next slide. And then when we look further at the NAICS codes, of course, computer related NAICS codes, but also commercial and construction NAICS codes that are expiring. And that, of course, must be related to some of the major construction work that the agency does do repeatedly. And then if you start looking at the type of set-asides, definitely we see SDVOSB set-asides, as also some 8A and woman-owned business contracts. Now, if you are an 8A and you do definitely want to do expiring contract searches where the incumbent's 8A is also expiring, and use that as a strategy to create relationships. I would also say, creating relationships with our verified veteran-owned businesses is also important, because that again is a nice way to work with an agency. Let's go to the next slide. So this is just a quick look at some of the top pre-solicitations and sources sought notices that are out there as of today. No, this was as of 2 days ago. So again, I will always tell you that make sure you respond to your pre-solicitations and sources sought if it is in the type of work that you do, because that is in many ways how the agency is creating or doing its market research. So let's go to the next slide. The VA budget is super comprehensive. I would highly recommend that you pay attention to what the budget items are. This is just a quick look at some of the things that I found of interest. I have more than $1.8 billion to continue the modernization of the Department of Veterans Affairs electronic health records. Of this amount, a little more than 500 million is in non-recurring maintenance funding for infrastructure projects. You have more than $3 billion for construction and expansion of the infrastructure and facilities, of which $1.4 billion is for major construction. Almost $14 billion for mental health facilities services, funds set aside for suicide prevention, almost $3 billion set aside for homeless programs, $5 billion on telehealth treatment, which is almost a 15% increase. And then, of course, you have funding for medical and prosthetic research, which is so important, and almost $6 billion that's set aside for the Office of Information and Technology. So this is just a quick look at the VA budget. I highly recommend that you based on the type of work you do, you pay attention to the budgets and use that as you're creating your strategies and solutions and as you're focusing on an agency. So I think that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for having me here. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I guess we now hand it over to Chanel.
Hello. Thank you for having me today. I can't start without saying how honored I am to be on the platform with my colleague over at FedMind. She and I have worked a lot together, and she makes my job so much easier, because as I was looking at today's presentation and what are the buys at VA, what are some best practices to look at, what is the budget like, etc. You really took a deep dive into that and brought that to the attention and to the forefront. So it really kind of synchronizes into what I will talk about today, and that's looking at it from the perspective of what is OSTABU doing. OSTABU as an advocate for the veteran-owned small business community, for the small business community, we are vet first. Not vet only. As you know, we are the federal agency that has the Vet First contracting program, that we look at our hierarchy of service disabled, veteran owned, and socioeconomical categories. But we are diversified, but we are also and inclusive, but our veteran population is very near and dear to our hearts. As you saw from the previous presentation, there was information that does talk about primes, and we do a lot of work with primes, but in doing the primes, there's a lot of opportunities for small businesses. There are a lot of opportunities with subcontracting, and when you look at how subcontracting is being changed, the legislation that's being put out there with subcontracting to use as past performance, really capturing that to make sure it's being used efficiently and effectively so that small businesses have past performance and be able to push or to move to the next level is very important. So what I'm going to do is an inside perspective from the government or from the Department of Veteran Affairs. Next slide, please. With the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, one of the main things that we have is that we do have VA is made up of three major administrations. That is our VA Benefits Administration, our Healthcare Administration, and our National Cemetery Administration. We also have a very big presence in the IT field arena as well. So just to give you an idea is that when you look at VA from our healthcare benefits, national cemetery, IT, construction, etc., it tells you that there is a lot of contracting opportunities. And as was previously said by my colleague, is that when you start looking at pharmaceutical, when you start looking at the VHA side, that's some of our top spends. When you go over to the VBA side, when we're also looking at everything from loans to compensation, etc., those things are contracted out. As those things, we are now, as you all are aware, the PACT Act. That has a very big presence in the Department of Veteran Affairs. This is probably one of the biggest things that's happened to our veterans in a very long time, and it's well deserved. So a lot of things are happening on that side. So contracts. National Cemetery Administration, when you look at that from that perspective, the majority of our contracts that are awarded through the National Cemetery Administration is done through the small business portal. Small businesses are making it happen. Then we have IT. She showed you IT, also showed you about 10 or 12 contracts that are about to expire within the next 12 months, or looking at contracts, looking at dollars, and it's in that IT arena. So there are opportunities, and I know people think of IT and T4, etc., but there are opportunities for veterans, service disabled, small business community as a whole. And so those are things that we're constantly trying to push. Be aware of those, take advantage of those, and always be looking for opportunity. If you would go back to the slide, please. Let's look at what we're doing within VA Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to share with you all just what we have available to the small business community, what we have to both internal and external stakeholders. As she is going down on the slide, you will see various things that we have. Getting verified to do business with the Department of Veteran Affairs. There is as a result of NDA 2021, in which verification is to move over to SBA by January 1st, 2023. But we are still doing verification applications and moving those along. We are less than 30 days to initial application for small businesses to get verified. So if it's your time or it's that time, please make sure that's happening. In addition to that, it talks about portfolio. It also talks about, working with the contract managers, etc., and how this process is very laid out to reduce the redundancy, but make it as simple as forward, but also ensuring that we are doing what we said we were going to do. And that is ensure that we have service disabled and veteran-owned small businesses that are verified. We also have VA small business goals and accomplishments. In that VA small business goals and accomplishments, we have everything looking at requirements to aid, counsel, assistant, etc. This information also talks about some of our information that we use when we're working with our Office of Acquisition and Logistics, what we're doing with our various internal acquisition community and contract to look at what are our small business goals, what are we doing with the service disabled veteran and the small business, and how does that impact with our primes or subcontractors, etc. We also have information on everything on how to log into our VIP portal. For those agencies or that are saying or that are unable to meet service disabled or veteran-owned small business goals, we say, partner with us, because there's one thing that we do. We meet those goals when it comes social economical goals, when it comes to service disabled and veteran owned, because that is our first priority. As was said earlier, to care for him who has bore the battle and for his widow and his orphan. That continues to transcend over into our veteran-owned small business community and our business community. We have everything from events, calendars. We do education and training to continue to train and educate our small business community to be aware, to have access, to help them understand the various vehicles that are out there, looking at risk mitigation, etc., and a lot of other things that, as we're on a constant dialogue internally, with the VA acquisition community. And as we're looking outward, making that diverse portfolio for our small businesses, that we provide them with the most comprehensive opportunities from education, training, outreach, understanding the FAR, the kingdomware, the rules, working with their small business liaisons. All of those things are critical. And that's what this, our website does a very good job. We even have on-demand training that's provided through our YouTube. So if a small business is participating in training and they can't bring the whole company because they still have to work, they can go back at any time, day, night, evening, whatever, weekend, with their company or with their individual members to do on-demand training to be able to look at the information, do it collectively as a group or do it individually. If you would scroll up a little bit more for me, please. A little bit more there, a little bit more. You're going to see information on marketing and networking opportunities. Our marketing and networking opportunities, where we have access to our direct access program. What is that? That's working with prime and working with industry. Once again, it's all about diversifying the portfolio. Access to our service, strategic outreach and communications. That's where we provide education, training, workshops on how to respond to an RFI, RFQ, how to write an effective capability statement, etc. Outreach, teaching about social media, the importance of social media, how to set up your social media, how to get behind the firewall, all of those various things. And we also have access to our Women Veteran-Owned Small Business Initiative. The Women Veteran-Owned Small Business Initiative was the first of its kind in the federal government. We are really serious about giving women veteran and economic opportunity. We have not met those goals in a long time, but we are getting so close. And that's because of the fight, both internal to the organization and the work that's being done to ensure that this is happening. Our acquisition and contracting support, that's what it's all about. Acquisition, contracting support, the people we have in place, the resources that are in place, the tools that are in place. Next slide, please. For a minute, I would like to take you for a link to our acquisition community or to our forecasting. Yes, we do have a forecasting, a link that is set up on our website. Information is provided. It can do everything. It can search by categories. We have the entire, it can be centralized to certain facilities. It can be, state specific. It can be NCO specific, etc. But what it does is it's a forecast of the fiscal year, of the various quarters. It's also broken down into dollar range, the various procurement vehicles, i.e. BPAs, IDIQs, etc. We also have proposed social economical categories, our procurement methods that we use, and then we also have our classification codes. Please understand that this is a good tool, but it's not the best tool. So VA continues to work on a forecasting tool that will be relevant, that it would be far-reaching, because in anything, as you know, perfect example is IT. You don't forecast for IT for within the next 4 to 5 years. You're looking at 5, 10, 15 years down the road, because IT technology changes so much. So we're working continuously on a vigorous forecasting tool that will be much better, because you want to grow and you want to hone in on things that we get feedback from on our forecasting tool. We also have just released within the Office of Acquisition and Logistics a Pathfinder tool. This Pathfinder tool is also good in the fact that it also will put you with a point of contact. You go in, you put in your profile, the information, etc. And then you can also say, I would like to meet with someone in construction, and put what you would like to meet with them on. And then it will automatically push out a point of contact and send your information to that specific directorate for them to follow up with you. So VA is doing a lot to try to ensure that there is opportunity and spread and expand our net to get the biggest, the best, and the brightest within the acquisition to bid on contracts. Next, please. Next slide, please. I would like to share with you all the Department of Veteran Affairs, our contracting, our social economical, our small business scorecard that we received from SBA. We received 100.05. We received an A within our for our contracting. This is, we are always very proud of that. That scorecard says we're doing what we should be doing. We would love to have an A+ because you always want to strive to take it to the next level. If you would go up a little bit on the slide deck, please. As you go up on the slide deck, you will see our information as it pertains to how we've done in FY21, what we've done with our small businesses, what we've done with our women, disadvantaged, service disabled, as well as our Hubzone. If you look at the Hubzone goals, if you look at where our goal is and what we achieved, you know, one of the reasons for the Women Veteran-Owned Small Business Initiative, and as you saw when my colleague spoke, the women goals are very important to our new secretary and to the Department of Veteran Affairs. All of our goals are, but we want to work to continuously put everyone on an even par and ensure that we are recognizing, working, and affording opportunities. So as I said, our small business goal from SBA, our scorecard, we received 100 on that, which was 100.05, an A, but we're striving for an A+. Next, please. Let me share with you, how do you get to us? I've spoken about, you know, making ourselves accessible, the verification program, about access, opportunities, industry days, etc. This information is so important because to get to for our small business, for our veteran business, for our primes, etc. We have outreach and events engagement constantly to provide information. This is just an example that's on our calendar of events that breaks it down month by month, day by day. We try to go out at least for 6 months so that you will have an idea of things that you could potentially look at or attend. When I talk about the VHA Vision 5 Medical Technology Industry Day, this is an industry day that's usually held at one of our medical facilities where we bring in, where small businesses come in, they bring their product, they bring the various products they have, and we have the end users, the doctors, the nurses, the technicians, etc., where they can actually touch the product, feel the product, ask questions, get demonstrations, go through that whole gamut so that they can look at that product and say, yes, this is what we need. Or they can have an opportunity to ask those questions. It's also an opportunity if a small business has an innovative idea that is within that medical directorate, that they can bring that in and they get an opportunity to be up and close with decision makers and the end users of the product. So they can ask questions, that end user can ask questions because they're using it. They know what they need, or in some cases, there are things out there that it helps them to see maybe what we have isn't necessarily the best and what this small business has could be better. So industry days are amazing. Please check out on those. We also have things that some are simplistic, where we look at understanding the FAR. The FAR is never simplistic, but it provides small businesses, etc., with the opportunity to really take a deep dive on things that affect them, because we always talk about procurement readiness. What is that? Is that being responsive and responsible? Those are the two things we look at in procurement readiness, but the FAR goes even more into detail to explain for our small businesses and others to understand exactly how does that look. And we also do training on the VAR, which is the Veterans, Federal Acquisition. We do engage with our small business liaisons, with our PTACs from around the country. We bring them in from all over the country because we want you or our small business community, our internal, external stakeholder, to get a perspective from an SBL, from that small business liaison, or from that PTAC counselor. What do you need to do business with VA? What do you need to do business with the federal government? What do you need to do business in private industry? All of these things are very important, and these are the things that we bring to the table. Another example, we listened, they spoke, we listened on creating an effective capability statement. Everyone has one. Everyone has different types of resumes. I like to use those interchangeably, but we went a little further and we decided to build a workshop. And with that, not only do you do training, but there's also a small interactive workshops that we hold, no more than 5 people in those small workshops, because we want to make it interactive. It's peer-to-peer, it's cohort, it's the opportunity for you to learn from each other and for us to take a deep dive with you. And we always say, come not in your feelings, because we're going to share good information, and it has to be something that you can receive and understand, because we want to make sure that when you're out there putting your resume forward, your capability statement forward, that it is something that's going to get you back at the table, so to speak. So these are a list of our various trainings that we have. This is for August, but you could go from August, September, any month, and be able to see our information. Back, please. Next slide. We also have our Vet Biz. If you look at our Vet Biz, this is a list of the various things that we have around the country. Coming in the end of this month, we have an event that's going to be a virtual one-on-one. We're going to have something with VISN phase 1 of maintenance complex that's going to be in New York. We have a industry day with PL&O, which is talking about our regional office. And if you look at our direct access events and our outreach events, it goes in alignment with what was said by my colleague from FedMind. It's because what happens is that look at what VA is buying, look at the industry, look at this and say, where do I fit in? What am I selling? And should I be there? Is this an opportunity? Am I enterprise level? Am I only, state, regional level? Where is your sweet spot? Where do you fit in? Because our outreach events, our training events, a lot of those are virtual, but we also have the opportunity for you to get engaged in person. Next slide, please. And then I always like to end with best practices. And with best practices, the first thing always up front is do your homework. Do your homework, know who you're selling to, know as a seller, know who is out there that you want that's buying your product. Do your homework on them. Do your homework on the agency. If there's innovation that you have, use the innovation route. We have an innovation research program that's very robust, but always do your homework, because if you're not doing your homework, you miss out on opportunities. Another big thing is market research, as said before. When you look at FedMind and you look at the briefing that was just done, everything had to do with market research. Know who your competition is. It's never bad thing to know your competition, because competition breeds the opportunity to grow. to get better. It brings a team, various things that are important. Market research. Market research is critical to any aspect of doing any type of contracting. Respond to sources sought and requests for information, pre-solicitations, etc. That's important because you can get valuable information from that. And a good person can also look at that for that request for information and say, there was something I may have left out in my requirements as well. So this is a great opportunity for you to start engaging, putting your name out there. Them where do I fit in, or how do I get more involved? The opportunity is small business, those service disabled and veteran-owned businesses. It's an opportunity to build lasting relationships, collaborate, extend the bandwidth, and be able to get your foot in the door. When it comes to also simplified acquisition, do not be afraid to look at simplified acquisition, to let VA know if you are a new business, have never done business, to be able to say, I know how to dot the I's, I cross the T's, and to build that relationship, that bandwidth, etc. Meet with procurement decision makers. What are those? Program managers, etc. You want to have an opportunity to get in front of them, present your product. With IT, there's a vendor management system to upload your documents into, your capability statement into, and request a meeting to meet with them. There are lots of opportunity when there are outreach events, when there are direct access events, industry days, those various opportunities for you to meet one-on-one or engage. Bring that business card. Make sure that business card is good, but it's not one of those shiny ones where you can't write on, but a good solid one where you can put information on. Do that. Bring capability statement. If you're going, as you know, there are 3 types of capabilities. You have your general capability statement. You have one that is agency specific. And then you also have one that is solicitation specific. So there's no one fit all capability statement. So be diverse, know your audience, where you're going, do your homework, and bring a capability statement that would fit that particular venue. Take advantage of our OSTABU resources. We are your advocate. Take advantage of us. Find out, we're the ones that look across VA with 2268s and say, why wasn't this set aside for a service disabled or veteran business? We're the ones that look at all of these various things, and then we'll say, hey, you know what? You need to go back and rethink this. We are your advocates. We are the ones working for you. And if we're not, if we need to change something, if we need to help you get there, we don't know if you don't ask. Have a current, as I said, capability statement, and have a website to complement your business. Have a website to complement your capability statement. If you're doing a capability statement and the recommended is a page or a back and front of a page, but there's so much good information that you have, make sure you use a website, because that's your extended arm to let them know what all you have, what you do, and what you're capable of. And I didn't put it on here, but make sure you have a good social media platform. A good social media platform is so important. It used to be that people said, I stay away. You have a personal Facebook, but you also have a professional Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Make sure that you're engaging, because engagement used to only happen at an event, but due to the pandemic, we're so virtual now, and people are using social media platforms so much more than ever before. Don't be left out by not being in the know and having a social media platform and a good solid website. These are good best practices that we have, and we recommend that you use those. That's all I have for you. So now I turn you over to my colleague, James.
Hello, everybody. First of all, this is Bill James. I'd like to thank Jennifer Schaus and my colleagues on today's panel to talk about the VA. Just a quick slide on the company, Federal Business. I'm the president. We're a business advisory and media firm. We're focused on one agency at a time, and it's specifically this time on VA. Hence my participation in today's call. And then we offer consulting services, from soup to nuts. And we have a media platform that is businessofva.com, where you can go and get some additional information about news and things that we're talking about and thinking about with regard to the VA. Next slide, please. You can see I'm in the middle. I am the president. To the left is Mr. James Jaffer, who was recently the CIO, and then to my right on the slide, Steve Vito, Chief Operating Officer of the company, and formerly also from VA, who was in the IT Strategic Communications Organization. I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary for DevOps in IT, and so today we're going to talk a little bit more and get down to a little bit more depth on some of the IT opportunities and my suggestions for your success in that market. And next slide, please. You've heard some of this today already. VA is more than a government agency. From a business, big business, small business perspective, it is a market. It's a size, budget-wise, of a Fortune 10 entity on the private sector. And we've heard the largest integrated healthcare organization in the United States, 425,000 employees, supporting 19 million veterans. Only 9 million or so are receiving services from VHA, but still all the veterans out there have some degree of support from the VA, depending on the benefits they've earned. And all of the VA medical centers, regional benefits offices, and the national cemeteries. I'm not going to go into the budget on the right because Chiza went through that in detail, but you can see it continues to grow every year, and it's a massive market. Next slide, please. On the right, you can see just some of the factoids associated with the VA, number of veterans receiving disability compensation, all the way down to healthcare professionals rotating to the VA, and of course the budget on the left. It's a monstrous budget, and the IT budget's about $5 billion all in. We heard that 5.8. That the interesting thing about the IT budget in VA is that it is directly appropriated from Congress, unlike other agencies where the CIO and the IT organizations, have to fight for their share of the pie. The IT appropriation is separate from the rest of the VA, and hence the CIO's authority to be held accountable for the spend against that budget. Next chart. I'm going to repeat some of the words we heard earlier today about the VA vision to provide the veterans world-class benefits and services they've earned. Next chart. And the mission to fulfill President Lincoln's promise. This is a picture of the, for those of you who have not been to see it, the front of the VA building. And so the neat thing that I liked and how fulfilling I felt working at VA was, your purpose is so clear and it's so noble. When you walk through the front door and you see those words, you know what you're walking in to work to do and the veterans you're asked to serve. So it's just really a fantastic place to work. And I recommend anybody to have an opportunity to work at VA or in civil service in general, they take a hard look at working at VA. It is just very fulfilling. We went through these missions on the right, including the fourth mission, which is in times of crisis like COVID, it actually offers healthcare services to non-veterans under certain circumstances. So it's a very broad mission. Next chart. So now I'm going to go into 4 major VA programs, and we're going to talk a little bit about the programs, but really what it means to you as companies, because I know a lot of the companies and individuals listening today are not a prime contractor in some of the major IDIQ contracts that were mentioned earlier. For example, the T4NG, NASA SOUP, CIOSP 3 and 4, and so forth and so on. And so they're wondering, well, heck, if I'm not a prime contractor, how do I get in? Well, the simple answer, and the one that most of us realize, is to find a sub role to a prime who's going to be bidding on one of those opportunities. So there are hundreds of opportunities coming out of the IT spend every year, but I'm going to talk about 4 major ones right now. Next slide. The number one that's current and everybody's talking about right now is the VA supply chain modernization. What you see on the right is just a depiction of the complexity of a major supply chain management organization, and there's lots of pieces and parts that are all connected with interfaces. And so on the left, you can see that includes things like IFCAP, which is part of the VISTA, which is Electronic Health Record Modernization, Maximo, RTLS, ServiceNow, plus hundreds of, as you can imagine, SharePoint and spreadsheets that individuals use to do their job every day. Well, the VA is trying to modernize that and centralize it in such a way that all the pieces are connected in a coherent way that serves the veterans and, of course, the employees of VA who serve veterans. So this is a major program. There's RFIs are out on the street. I anticipate there'll be additional RFIs to come. I give credit to the Office of Acquisition Logistics for doing such a great job of outreach to industry. They're looking for industry input, and they've done so repeatedly. I think it is the poster child for the way to do acquisitions and to help industry, help VA make their acquisitions better. So this is an opportunity, I think, that for all the small businesses listening today, if you have something that you think would fit or be a differentiator for a prime contractor that is going after this, that you seek out a prime. If you're not bidding it as a prime yourself, seek out a prime and make your case for being a part of the team. A monstrous opportunity here. Next slide. The next big modernization effort in VA is the financial modernization. This is known as Financial Management Business Transformation, FMBT, also known as IFAMS, IFAMS. You can Google those and you can get the information that you need. But it is ongoing right now, but it is not yet complete. They've made progress in the National Cemetery Administration rolling this out. It's really going very well. And the next up is, I think, the huge mountain to climb, which is VHA, the Veterans Health Administration. So I think that'll be challenging for all of the accountants and the bookkeepers and VHA to begin doing their business a different way. But that's the essence of change management and modern programs right now. That's why change management is such a critical success factor. It's not only about the IT, it's about how people's jobs change and how their workflows change and how that change is how the people behind that change are educated and learn how to do their business in a different way with new tools. So major opportunity. Keep this one on your lookout list, because I think there may be some opportunities for additional sub roles in the future. Next chart. A third major modernization opportunity is the HR, VA Human Resources Modernization. There's also been an RFI out on this a few months back. There's another one coming out. As you can imagine, this touches every employee in the VA, and so I think this will be a major opportunity. Again, for those primes who consider priming, good luck. This is going to be a big deal because of its breadth and scope and complexity. And for those smalls and SDVSBs and small businesses, this is an opportunity to sub to, I think, a major prime contractor that will be responsible for this program's success. These three are all multi-billion-dollar programs, I believe. So just keep your eyes out for them and try to find a way to show your stuff and your differentiator to be part of one of the teams that are bidding on them. Next chart. And the final one of what I think is, and we saw the budget numbers on this one earlier in today's presentation, the VA Electronic Health Record Modernization. that was underway. The old legacy program called Vista is being electronic health record modernization program called Vista is being replaced incrementally over the next 10 plus years by a commercial off-the-shelf software system called Cerner, and a particular product called Millennium. And but it's got a long way to go. I mean, it's got, as you saw earlier in slides, hundreds of medical centers and clinics to support. So as this rolls out across the country, Vista still needs to be maintained because it doesn't go away until the last Vista has been retired. So it's a long-term program, multi-billion-dollar program, as you saw earlier in the budget numbers. But not only do you have the program itself, which has Cerner as the prime contractor and there are many subs, but there is also on all of these programs, generally speaking, there's a program management office, a corollary program to keep track of cost, schedule, risk, progress, and issues like that. So so in both cases, I think there's opportunities for primes and subs, big and small. Next chart. So that's all I had to share with you today. There are hundreds of other programs, as I stated, but be happy to take any questions if anybody wanted to send something to me via email and see what we can do together. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Bill, for your presentation. Thank you to our entire panel, Ms. Archisa Meehan, Bill James, who you just heard from, and Chanel Bankston Carter. We thank you so much for being with us. And we will have the recording from today's webinar up on our YouTube channel and website within the next 24 hours, so you can rewatch and look at your notes. The slides will also be available on slideshare.net, so we'll be sending those out. Thank you so much for attending today and for attending our Procurement Playbook series overall. We hope that you join us next week on Tuesday for our NSA Playbook, as well as our complimentary webinar on Senate committees. So thank you so much. This concludes the webinar.